mamas. Thank you guys so much, and dads if you're watching this video. I guess I just assume because it's a breastfeeding video, it will be mostly moms, but if you are watching this video, thank you so much for being here. I am Caitlin and this is Beans and Monkeys. I just want to encourage you guys, if you are new here, to hit that red subscribe button down below. I would love to have you with me. I do lots and lots of mom stuff, so I hope that you'll find some stuff that you enjoy. But today we're gonna talk about the 5 things that I wish that I knew before I had started breastfeeding, and that was with my second child. I did breastfeed for a little bit with my first daughter, but I don't think really long enough to be able to look back at that experience and use it as advice, other than to say don't feel guilty if it isn't working. So I'll go ahead and admit I researched breastfeeding like crazy. I didn't really know how it was gonna go. I knew that my daughter didn't really want to latch and she preferred to take a bottle because that's what she was offered first in the NICU. But I didn't know how it would go with my son. I hoped that it would be successful. I knew from attempting to breastfeed and pumping with my daughter that I was not gonna have any issues with milk supply, or at least I didn't the previous time. So that was a big relief. But when I was researching, there were all kinds of things that people said you should do to prepare your body before you have your baby, all these things you should be taking, all these things you should be doing. And I think I honestly over-researched, but I didn't really talk to very many people who had gone through the experience. So I hope that my personal experience will help you guys to navigate your breastfeeding relationship. I feel like I can create this video because I'm actually coming from a place of having fully weaned my son. We breastfed for almost a full 2 years, and we had so many ups and downs and so many changes in our breastfeeding journey that I feel like I have so much to share with you guys. So let's go ahead and get started on the 5 things that I absolutely had no idea were coming my way when I first started breastfeeding Harrison. And I wish that someone would have told me these things before I had started. So here we go. So the first one is breastfeeding on demand. So this was something that I planned. I planned to feed Harrison on demand. I did not want to nurse him on a schedule. I knew that for sure. But I didn't realize what was involved in breastfeeding on demand. Honestly, Harrison was a little boob monster. I swear, he was a breastfeeding champ in a really good way, but he was always at the breast. He loved to nurse. It was like his food, but also like his comfort place. So, which is totally a normal and natural thing. But I wish somebody would have told me what it meant to breastfeed on demand. I wish somebody would have looked me in the eye and said, you're gonna be stuck in your recliner for the next 6 months to a year. You're not gonna get up unless you are breastfeeding him in public, and you are going to have to figure out how to navigate your life from a seated position while you are a mom of another child. And then with that breastfeeding on demand, it can get even more intense when you throw in cluster feeding. And basically cluster feeding is when your baby will nurse for like a short period of time, take a short period of time off, then back, then off, then back. For me, that was the hardest part because I felt like I was letting my daughter down because I couldn't even really talk to her because so much of my time was focused on latching this baby and figuring out why he was cluster feeding and what he needed, when honestly he was jaundice and my milk had not fully come in and he was trying to figure out how to eat. So we had so much at play in those beginning days. I was just so blown away. I didn't know that breastfeeding would be that way. And while I loved watching Harrison be such a champ at breastfeeding, personally and maybe even a little bit selfishly, it took a big toll on me till I knew what breastfeeding looked like, because I was a second-time mom, but I was a first-time breastfeeding mom. So I'm wondering if maybe because I was a second-time mom, people didn't take the time to really look me in the eye and tell me what breastfeeding was all about. But I wish that somebody would have, and I hope that this helps someone out there who's watching this. So the next thing that I wish somebody would have talked to me about is frequent nursing sessions. And so that kind of goes with breastfeeding on demand. We fed Delilah formula when she was an infant and into toddlerhood. So up to like a year, I think she had formula, and she could go a good 6-hour stretch without eating. So I don't know why, but I assumed that it would be really similar with Harrison. But breast milk is actually digested way faster in your baby's belly. So most breastfed babies, I think on average, I think the average is like somewhere between 3 to 4 hours is when they should be fed. But Harrison in the beginning was nursing, I swear, every 2 hours. And then when he had a cluster feed, it was even more often than that. So I was, again, like baffled at how often he was nursing, especially through the night, because I'm someone who really values my sleep, and I don't think that I realized what an impact breastfeeding was gonna have on my sleep. Harrison still is sleeping in our bed if we want him to sleep through the night, so we're still not quite at that point where we are sleeping through the night. Even though he's fully weaned, he's fully on like big boy food, we are still working on sleep. And so I think that, especially when he was nursing that often, I wish somebody would have sat down and told me, you know, if you're breastfeeding, your baby is gonna be breastfeeding often, and this is what that looks like, and this is what it felt like to me. I wish somebody would have sat down and said that. I hope that since I'm sitting down here with you guys, that you will be able to get a little bit more clear picture about what my nursing experience looked like and what yours could look like, because this is not to say that this is gonna be how it is for every baby. And this is not to say that this is negative or that I disliked breastfeeding in any way, that I don't want you guys to take it that way. I loved breastfeeding Harrison, but I was shocked when I would come into these stages and I didn't realize that they were gonna happen. The next thing that I wish somebody would have told me about is that mama's milk is precious. And I didn't realize how I would feel about my breast milk and that kind of thing. I feel like I had a little bit of an oversupply when I was pumping with Delilah, but with Harrison, I was literally making just enough to feed him. And I was a working mom, so pumping was something that I had to do. I was working outside of the home, so I had to pump to make sure that he had enough milk. And I can remember a day when I was so tired. I went into work and I was doing my first morning pump, and I clumsily bumped into the bottle of the breast milk that I had just finished pumping, and it spilled all over my classroom. And I remember sitting down at the student desks before the kids came in, and I was sobbing because it took me 30 minutes to an hour to pump 6 ounces of milk at that time. And I was sobbing. I didn't know if my son would have enough. I barely had a freezer stash. And so I envisioned that I would have to pump extra that day and lose a little bit more sleep. And so for me, my milk was super, super precious. I actually did something. I donated a little bit of my breast milk when I was able to a mama who had adopted a baby. And I felt so proud that I was able to do that. But I think that also helped me to lighten up about my milk. Eventually I was able to pour some of the bad milk down the drain, even though I cringed still just a little bit. And I do still have 1 6-ounce package of milk in the freezer. It's probably not any good to actually feed to anybody anymore, but I don't know, I just would feel horrible throwing that away, although I don't know what else to do with it. So mama's milk is precious. The next thing that I wish somebody would have told me is that pretty much everybody, everywhere you go, is gonna see your boob. And I think that there are some moms who do like nursing in public really creatively with a cover, but for me, Harrison did not want anything to do with the cover. And I've talked about this before, but that boy would kick the blanket off or kick the cover off and be flailing around under there. And so even if I tried to cover, I was exposed anyway. So I kind of resolved myself to just nursing in public uncovered, which was kind of difficult because I'm a busty girl. I'm a 38 double D. And so, you know, even with my baby right there, a lot of my body was still exposed. And so I had to come to terms with that, and I had to learn how to be okay with that. Everyone and their mom was gonna see my boob, and I also had to become okay with, which is totally crappy that I had to become okay with this, but I had to become okay with people staring at me or asking me questions or like saying negative things about me or that kind of thing when I was nursing my baby. I just want anyone who was around during that time to know that it was way more uncomfortable for me to nurse in public than it was for you to be around me while I was nursing in public. So just know that, and know that whenever you see a nursing mom in public, she's probably really anxious about it, even if she tries to put on a confident front. It's not an easy thing to like free the nipple in public. It's really not. And even if you kind of get into a routine and it's something that you are like somewhat comfortable with, I think that most nursing moms kind of get this little twinge of anxiety because you know, you see in the media, you see people being asked to leave places, you see people having things said to them when they're breastfeeding in public, and you don't know if it's gonna happen to you, but your baby needs to eat. So, you know, and babies sometimes choose inconvenient times to eat. Maybe you're trying to have a meal at a restaurant and you have to figure out how to juggle your fork and like holding your baby to eat. Like, it's just one of those things that I wish somebody would have talked to me about before I started breastfeeding. And the last thing, and I'm gonna get maybe a little emotional in this part, so sorry ahead of time. The last thing that I wanna talk to you guys about is that I didn't want breastfeeding to end, and I didn't know that that was gonna happen. I thought that when it was time to wean, everything would be just great and it would be like a clean break and everybody would be fine. But I weaned Harrison because I knew that it was time. I was ready to get my body back, and he was kind of in this weird stage where I think if I hadn't weaned him, it would have just gotten to be like kind of an emotional crutch for him. It felt like the right time to me, but at the same time, we had this time together that nobody else got to have. And for that to end, it was heartbreaking to me. It was really sad. I loved breastfeeding Harrison, and I was really sad when it was over, even though I was initiating it. Breastfeeding was one of the most positive experiences for me as a mother. I feel like I got that chance that I didn't get to with Delilah to really experience breastfeeding because I had a baby who was such a often nurser and such an amazing nurser that I got to experience that, and I am forever grateful for that. But to know that it was gonna end and to look at him when it was his last nurse that night, and then to have to tell him no, that we couldn't nurse anymore, that just broke my little mama heart in two, and I am getting a little misty, so I apologize about that. But it is a really emotional thing for both the mom and the baby. It's a huge bonding thing. For me, I didn't want it to end, and I didn't know that that's how I would feel about it when it came time to end breastfeeding. So if you guys like this video, I hope that you will give it a big thumbs up for me. If there is anything that you wish you would have known before you started breastfeeding, if you were a breastfeeding mom or a support partner for a breastfeeding mom, feel free to leave those tips down below as well. I know lots of our moms would like to hear them. If you want to connect with me outside of YouTube, feel free to find me over on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. All that stuff is just down below. And by the way, you guys, have fun today.